Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the International Criminal Court convicts the first Janjaweed militia leader for atrocities in Sudan's Darfur region committed more than 20 years ago. Ali Mohammed Ali Abd al-Rahman is found guilty on 27 counts of crimes against humanity, including rape, murder and persecution. Also, Senegal's Pink Lake is increasingly drawing the eye of property developers with plans for multi-million-dollar constructions of tens of thousands of homes. However, people already living nearby worry that projects like this could impact their unique environment. And Africa Week UK has its inaugural gathering amidst Britain's Black History Month. Organisers spotlight the specific contribution that African communities have made to the UK economy and culture. I speak to one of the organisers. But first, a Sudanese militia chief has been convicted for war crimes by the International Criminal Court. Ali Mohammed Ali Abd al-Rahman was found guilty for abuses committed in the Darfur region between 2003 and 2004. Rights leaders have hailed the decision as an acknowledgement of the suffering of those who endured the brutality that he oversaw and a warning for combatants in Sudan's current conflict. Fernand Van Tetz brings us more.
The International Criminal Court in The Hague earlier today for the sentencing of Ali Mohammed Ali Abd al-Rahman, also known as Ali Khashab, a Janjaweed leader in Sudan. He was found guilty on 27 charges of crimes against humanity and war crimes, including looting, persecution, murder and rape. Now, the judges outlined today how the Janjaweed under his command would force people out of their homes, burn down their houses, take their livestock, also rape women and girls in an organised fashion and often force children to watch as well at gunpoint. Now, the judgment includes a number of the victims' names. They said they deserve to be more than a number. And this trial started back in 2022. Now, 74 witnesses have been heard over the past few years. And the judges say they are convinced that the defendant is this leader. He'd always claimed he was just a pharmacist with no connection to the events. None of the judges believed that. Now, he is the first Sudanese leader to be convicted here in The Hague. Actually, former President Omar Bashir is also sought by the court for genocide, as are two former ministers. And Sudan has been unwilling to hand them over to The Hague. And that is because Sudan is not a member of the court. However, the UN Security Council referred the investigation into the crimes in Darfur to the court in The Hague, and that is how this arrest started. The sentencing, that has not happened yet. A date will be set for that today. But the maximum imprisonment that can be imposed for this is life imprisonment.
Fernand Van Tetz there for us. Now, Sudan is still embroiled in a conflict that has caused the world's worst humanitarian disaster since it first erupted in 2023. Tens of thousands of people have been killed and millions displaced amidst a power struggle between the army and the RSF militia. Now, in the main city of Khartoum, communities trying to make it through the unrest are also now facing severe flooding. Clem Valla tells us more.
Carrying what possessions they can, these residents slowly evacuate the flooded areas of Wadi Ramli village. As they salvage their things, they also take stock of the damage to their homes and their farms.
Lemon, banana and onion farms were destroyed due to the floods. We returned to our homes after the army said we could and rebuilt our lives. Then the Nile came again.
Over the past 3 days, water levels from the Nile River surged to turn the once bustling village into a watery ghost town. Local emergency services have been mobilized to help the families and assess the situation.
Families are in the process of being evacuated and emergency teams have been with them and helping for the past few days since the floods hit and the Nile level rose in the Wad Ramli area.
Every year during the rainy season, Sudan suffers from devastating floods. This year, 6 Sudanese states have been particularly hard hit, according to the Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation. Among the causes of the worsening floods listed by experts, intensified rainfall, the worsening impact of the climate crisis, and weak flood defences, which have been damaged by an ongoing civil war. The Ministry of Agriculture has also blamed the severity of this year's floods on the water releases of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which began on the 10th of September.
Look now at some news in brief. A week after dissolving the government in response to ongoing protests over power and water shortages, Madagascar's President Andry Rajoelina has named Army General Rufin Fortunat Zafisambo as Prime Minister. Rajoelina has said that Zafisambo's priority will be getting the country's ailing utility infrastructure back up and running. However, on Monday, protests continued, with many calling for the president to step down. Also, 10 more deported migrants have arrived in Eswatini from the United States. They're the latest of more than 40 deportees sent by the Trump administration under agreements struck up with at least 5 African countries, including South Sudan, Rwanda and Ghana, to take in people expelled from the US. 4 men from Cuba, Laos, Vietnam and Yemen sent to the country in July have been held in a maximum security prison in Eswatini ever since. At least 2 Vietnamese nationals were on this latest flight. Eswatini rights groups have objected fiercely to receiving US deportees. UNESCO's executive board's backed Egypt's Khalil El-Anani as its new Director General. The votes went 55-2 in favour of the former Tourism and Antiquities Minister. He was up against the Republic of Congo's Edouard Firmin Matoko. The decision now only has to be approved by the 194 members of the UN's cultural agency. That's due in November. Well, to Senegal now, where the Pink Lake, the country's second most popular tourist attraction, is increasingly drawing the attention of property developers. Nearly 10,000 homes are due to spring up there over the next few years, but residents already living around the lake worry about the multi-million-dollar project's impact on the unique environment. Our team sent us this report.
Senegal's Pink Lake, or Lac Rose, is a mythical phenomenon. Surrounded by sand dunes, beaches and pine-like filao trees. It's also now the site where the Egyptian multinational Casa Orascom plans to build nearly 10,000 homes.
The sea is right there. We're not going to let them cut down the strip of filao trees so the sea can reach our village.
Locals say the project is a non-starter. They've already blocked work on a road the developers began building.
The strip of filao trees is a safety barrier for the environment and for the lives of the entire population of the Niayes area. They're in the process of destroying the filao belt and the dunes. They're destroying all the fauna and flora.
The multinational rejects the accusations of destruction, promising instead to build a green city with a total cost of 550 billion CFA francs.
When we arrived, we found 90 hectares of filao trees on the site. We will preserve those 90 hectares. That is the commitment we signed with the Ministry of the Environment. But we're going even further because in the development of the site, there will be more than 15 additional hectares of greenery added. What we want to do is provide a living environment that's sustainable and green.
Local authorities say that when the project was authorized, clear instructions were given to Casa Orascom to protect the filao forest.
The developer can't move forward into the filao forest because that is a major constraint written into their lease agreement. The preservation of biodiversity and the protection of the Pink Lake is essential.
With 20,000 jobs expected, authorities say they hope to turn the lake into a major tourist hub, even as land disputes around the site continue to grow.
Well, Black History Month has been celebrated every October in the United Kingdom since 1987. And people of African origin have been living in Britain since the time of the Romans, with whole communities dating back to the 1500s. Now, starting in 1948, thousands of people from the Caribbean were invited to the UK to help rebuild post-war Britain. And descendants of that Windrush generation have had a huge impact on shaping British culture and contemporary life. But there is also a substantial community of British people with more recent African heritage from countries like Ghana, Nigeria, Somalia, all of whom are keen to celebrate and spotlight their unique experiences and identities. Well, I'm joined now by Akwasi Ajiman, one of the organisers of Africa Week UK, a festival put on amidst the Black History Month in the United Kingdom. Akwasi, thanks very much for making the time to speak to me. So this was the very first time there was you guys have put on this Africa Week UK. What for you is so distinct about the contribution of African expats to UK life and UK progress?
All right, thanks for having me. And I believe you rightly said it. The contribution of Africans in the UK is both deep and dynamic. I mean, we're talking about African heritage permeating the UK systems in terms of healthcare, business, entrepreneurship, everything. You can really see the footprint of Africa here in the UK. And we thought it wise that we put a showcase of Africa's contribution to UK life on the spotlight, especially heralding Black History Month in October.
So when you're talking about Black History Month, I think there's sometimes a tendency for people to lump Black history and Black communities together, particularly in a UK context. But when you put on this very African-centric event, what was it that you were hoping to highlight? Is there any particular difference between African communities and Caribbean communities in the UK? Or did you make an effort to also have an outreach between these very separate, different communities?
Yeah, so Africa Week was born out of a desire to spotlight Africa's contribution in the UK. But we are also very intentional about our outreach to the wider Black diaspora in terms of contribution of the Caribbeans, who have been the backbone of Black British identity over the years. And so we stood on the shoulders of the work that they have done in the past. There's a new wave of Africanness here in the UK. And this was the opportunity for us to more or less bring a shared responsibility and a shared diversity of Africa and the Caribbean community here in the UK.
Mm-hmm. And so this, the event that you're holding, that you've arranged, you're hoping it's the first of several, and it's not just about culture; it's also about business. You know, I think now is a very important time to be looking at how to cultivate links between African business people and the business community and the rest of the world. You know, when you're looking at some of the uncertainties African exporters are facing with the expiry of the AGOA trade deal between America and the continent, do you see that as an opportunity for Britain in terms of courting attention from African exporters? And if so, you know, what would you like to see happen in that space?
So for Africa Week UK, we deliberately built in a business and policy dimension to the conversation, especially with the expiration of the AGOA trade agreement in September 2025. The broader shifts in the global trade. And there's real opportunity for Britain to deepen its ties with Africa, not just through aid or diplomacy, but also through enterprise, investments, and mutual growth. And so we're looking at African exporters actively seeking new partners, British businesses seeking partners post-Brexit, and also looking at ways that they can enter new markets. So Africa Week UK created a space for these conversations and also real stakeholder engagements, not just symbolic gestures, but things that we can use as building blocks to deepen the conversation and the collaboration between Africa and the UK.
Thank you so much. Akwasi Agyeman, the CEO of the Africa Centre for Hospitality, Aviation and Tourism, and one of the co-organisers of the first Africa Week UK alongside Black History Month in the UK.
This is just the start, and we look forward to building on it.
Thank you so much, Akwasi. And thank you all for joining us for Eye on Africa. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.